let's go ahead and get started here. So by way of introduction, my name is Joe Stocker. I'm the founder and CEO of Patriot Consulting. We're joined today with Matt Soseman from Microsoft. Matt, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself and your background here.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So Matt Soseman, I'm a senior security architect at Microsoft, and I work with our partners out in the ecosystem to help them build up their security practice, enhance their security capabilities, and help their clients be successful with Microsoft security compliance and identity solutions. So been working with Joe for a number of years and really excited to be here and do this webinar.
Thank you, Matt. For those that don't know much about Patriot, just a very quick recap on who we are and what we do. So we're a Microsoft Elite Partner. We focus just on the Microsoft Cloud security. So we've got the gold competency there. We were also very honored to assist in the AccountGuard Defending Democracy program. We continue that effort now. There's 5 national elections we're helping with globally, and then 31 additional democracies that we'll be assisting with. We've completed over 600 projects since 2015, and this is really, clients really hire us, Matt, when they need help hardening Office 365 or deploying their, Microsoft security solutions. Today's topic is actually probably one of the most important concepts in security today. So we're going to have Matt Soseman present. Matt actually presented on Zero Trust when I first met him. It was actually at the RSA conference a couple of years ago. He presented on Zero Trust. So he's definitely been really a pioneer and forerunner on the Microsoft's approach to the strategy. There's other concepts of Zero Trust that other vendors use. We're going to be hearing Microsoft's perspective of that today. And then following Matt's presentation, I'm going to give some best practices on how to deploy it, and we'll do some live demo of the configuration sessions as well. So since we have so much content to cover today, we're going to go ahead and dive in. So Matt, take it away. So what is Microsoft Zero Trust?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's probably many different ways I can answer that, but I'm going to take you through some slides here and kind of give you a nice high-level view of how we think about it here at Microsoft. It's been an evolving story over the last few years, but when you think of Zero Trust, I go back in my career. Gosh, I've been in my career for a little over 20 years now. So when I first started, I was in a office building in downtown Kansas City. It was a high-rise, office building. I was at a workstation, a terminal, basically. It was like Windows NT, I think was what we were using back then, and Exchange 5.5 and all that. But I was in an office building on a workstation that was obviously managed by that organization's IT department, and I was accessing data and applications in a data center somewhere that organization owned. And so everything was behind their firewall, if you will, and everything was protected, and they controlled the entire experience. And that's how it was back then. And Joe, if you go to the next slide for me, and we fast forward to 2021, man, there's lots that's changed in the last 20 some years. And when you think about the explosion of individuals, of employees bringing their own smartphones and tablets to the workplace, the explosion of SaaS and software as a service, and how I can store a file up on the cloud and share it with anybody in the world, how I can literally get work done anytime, anywhere, any place. I mean, the world's changed. And so that mindset of 20 years ago of owning everything in my data center and managing that workstation and being in that office building, it was assumed I was supposed to be there. And now that model just doesn't apply, because you have people with the pandemic here working remotely. You have them using a personal device. It's not even managed by the company. You have them storing data in places that are outside of maybe the company's purview, and it requires a different approach. And so when you think about Zero Trust, I always kind of start with that, and I kind of ask everybody, think about where you started in your career, and look at where it is now. That's the change. And so that's really the driving force behind Zero Trust. And when you think about what's going to happen this year and even going into the next few years, this is kind of Matt's list here. So when I think about traditionally users are employees, I think about, well, everybody is treated as a user, not just my own employees, but my business partners, even my customers. We're now starting to see bots on, companies' websites doing bookings for a hotel or whatever it may be. Those are all treated as user entities that we need to secure. And when you think about that traditional corporate managed device, I mentioned that I was in that office building in downtown Kansas City accessing that workstation. It was managed. It was assumed I was supposed to be there, right? It's under lock and key, and that thing is managed. Well, now we got people bringing in their own MacBooks, bringing in their own Linux machines, bringing in their own Windows laptops, iPhones, Androids, you name it. But in addition to that, we see manufacturing firms and just industry out there deploying IoT or operational technology to automate, everything from a CNC machine to medical equipment. And so this whole notion of this managed device is changing. On-premises apps, obviously, we still have them. You still have apps that are, in an on-premises notion, if you will, but SaaS is exploding. Office 365, Dropbox, Google Workspace, G Suite, everything. And that's driving the business. When you think about it, all these things I've talked about so far, it's no longer the business is pushing IT to be what's next. IT is now pushing the business on how to compete. I mean, if you think about recruiting, quick tangent, I got into a conversation a few weeks ago with one of our other partners, and they were telling me about one of their clients that they're looking at all of this as a way to recruit talent. Because if you think about the talent that's coming out of university right now, they're expecting this stuff. And so if you don't allow them and enable zero trust and the ability to do these different things, they're going to go on to your competition. So that's something to think about. And Joe mentioned my RSA presentation around zero trust. And so I kind of joke around like no more firewalls, but I work from home exclusively. I do travel back when we used to be able to travel, but I don't have a $100,000 firewall sitting here in my office. I've got a computer just like you do, and I've got my own home router. So that perimeter is expanding, and the common denominator there is identity. And Joe's going to talk more about that when we get into the demo. And then behind all of this is the explosion of signals. So think about the reporting and all the dashboards and all of the data that you have access to. Next slide, please. So
yeah, well, on this, I had a quick interaction here. I noticed you had, the kind of old schooler, what Wired Magazine would say is tired, local packet tracking and logs.
Yeah.
I still see, Matt, a lot of organizations wanting to kind of deploy like Sysmon agents everywhere, and then having to build a lot of infrastructure to host all that data centrally. And then really, from my perspective now, having seen what Microsoft has offered, it's a little bit of like reinventing the wheel, or not necessary, because obviously now with Defender for Endpoint, with all the data it's able to collect, you really don't have to deploy that Sysmon agent. You're able to get all the data, the Sysmon might be collecting without the need to do that. And then once it's in the cloud, then you get the actual integration, whereas that integration with locally is a lot harder. But
absolutely, it does require kind of a standpoint of what exactly are you trying to protect, and it does require a shift in your IT mindset. And the cool part here about zero trust is it's a business enabler. So when you think about sending somebody to go work from home or work remotely and do that in a secure and compliant fashion, you can only do that when you have a zero trust approach to it. And so what that means, and for Microsoft, what that means is when we think about productivity, we could actually be secure and productive in the same sentence. And you often don't hear that. And so with Teams and Office and Windows and the other Microsoft technology, security is directly integrated into it. It's not bolted on, it's built in. And so a lot of these policies and things you could deploy in the Microsoft security ecosystem are just directly integrated. You would never know it's there as an end user. And that's kind of the beauty behind it. So you can still be productive and you can still be secure. But the other cool part about it is for folks that have a SOC and have the requirement to go beyond that, obviously there's all the reporting. So this is where the Microsoft Zero Trust solution comes in. Now this is at a very high level, and we can talk about this at a deeper level later, but it starts with identity in the center, and everything is evolving around your identity. And then from there, we're making intelligent decisions on whether or not we're going to allow you through the front door. So we're looking at your user account. We're looking at what privileges do you have? Are you an admin? The riskiness of your session, or your accounts? Are your credentials up for sale on the dark web? Are you trying to log in from an anonymous VPN client? That kind of stuff. And so as we're doing that, we're making a decision, but then we're mixing that with other signals. So maybe from your device. So a great example of this is, as a Microsoft employee, I'm required to use a device that's managed. Now, it could be my personal device, but it has to be managed and it has to be compliant. So it's got to have all the right policy on it for me to access a corporate resource like my email or Teams or whatever. And so we're now looking at signals coming from that device. And so if the device is non-compliant at any point, then we'll deny you access. And that's kind of the beauty here of zero trust. If it's not up to date on OS updates, list goes on and on. Or if it has a threat, you see Microsoft Defender for Endpoint listed there. If that device has ransomware installed on it, it will actually stop the sync of OneDrive or the Dropbox client or whatever client you have on there from syncing with its cloud service to be able to protect it. And then on the other side of this, on the right side, is a bunch of other stuff where we can look at what's the kind of data you're trying to access through Microsoft Information Protection. But one of my favorite parts about this is with Microsoft Cloud App Security, I can allow you to have access and maybe put you on Rails. So maybe you're a contractor. I can allow you to log into something like SharePoint, but you can't download anything. You can't copy any data out of it. And all of this applies, obviously, to the Microsoft Cloud of products, Office 365, but it also applies to third-party SaaS apps in the thousands, and even on-premises apps as well through systems like Azure AD App Proxy. And so this is our zero trust solution. There's a lot more to it than this picture, but this is our starting point.